الحمد لله رب العالمين نحمده سبحانه وتعالى حمد الشاكرين المعترفين بنعمائه العظيمة وآلائه الجسيمة. اللهم لك الحمد يا ربنا، أنت أحق أن تحمد، ولك الشكر، أنت أحق أن تشكر، وأنت على كل شيء قدير، لك العتبى حتى ترضى، ولا حول ولا قوة لنا إلا بك. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وحبيبه، بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة وكشف الغمة، وجاهد في الله حق الجهاد حتى أتاه اليقين. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على الحبيب المصطفى محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه ومن اهتدى بهديه وعمل بسنته إلى يوم الدين، وارض عنا معهم بفضلك وكرمك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم آمين. I praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator of heavens and earth, the provider, sustainer, the cherisher. I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, endless He is in His glory, for the blessings that He has granted each and every one of us. I express my gratitude to the Lord in words and action. I say Alhamdulillah for blessings I know and blessings I'm unaware of. I bear witness that there is no deity worthy of worship save Allah. And I bear witness that Muhammad is Allah's final prophet and messenger, the bearer of glad tidings, the role model to be followed, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. May the peace and the blessings of Allah be upon the Prophet and his family, his descendants, his companions, and their followers, and all the righteous men and women that walk in their footsteps. And I ask Allah to make each and every one of us among them. Allahumma ameen. My dear brothers and sisters, I greet you with the greeting of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and your family and loved ones. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our fast, to answer our du'as, and to elevate our ranks and status in this beautiful month of Ramadan. Allahumma ameen. In Surah Al-Anbiya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes a universal statement, and He says, وَلَقَدْ كَتَبْنَا فِي الزَّبُورِ مِنْ بَعْدِ الذِّكْرِ أَنَّ الْأَرْضَ يَرِثُهَا عِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحُونَ. In the translation of this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we've laid down in the scriptures. The word Zabur, by the way, when Allah says, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا دَاوُودَ زَبُورًا, the word Zabur, a lot of people assume that this is the actual book, the scripture that was sent to Dawood alayhi salam. Rather, the word Zabur is a generic word for scriptures in general. It's like the word kitab. Zabara in Arabic means to write. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ كَتَبْنَا فِي الزَّبُورِ, we've laid down or written down in a Zabur, that means it has been laid down in the scriptures. مِن بَعْدِ الذِّكْرِ, after Allah has exhorted man, after Allah has reminded man, has shown man all the signs in the universe and in themselves. After Allah has established this truth to man, He laid it down in the scriptures. What is that truth? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَنَّ الْأَرْضَ يَرِثُهَا عِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحُونَ, that this earth will be inherited by the righteous servants of Allah. Scholars have had their interpretations as to what that means. Some scholars would say this means political power and sway. That no matter how long, batil, unrighteousness or evil controls the earth, no matter how long tyrants remain in power, ultimately the righteous believers will take hold. Some scholars said that the real essence of this ayah is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to say it is only the righteous believers that understand the value of this earth, that have the capability to unearth the secrets, that have the capability to utilize the earth and the khair, the good that exists on this earth, to the best of their ability. Some scholars even added the very beautiful meaning that al-ard here, land in this ayah, doesn't even refer to this earth, rather it refers to ardul jannah, the land of Jannah itself. أَنَّ الْأَرْضَ يَرِثُهَا عِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحُونَ, that this land that the righteous will inherit is the land of Jannah. The same meaning is reflected in another ayah in Surah Az-Zumar, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically says the same exact thing. وَقَالُوا الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ الَّذِي صَدَقَنَا وَعْدَهُ وَأَوْرَثَنَا الْأَرْضَ نَتَبَوَّأُ مِنَ الْجَنَّةِ حَيْثُ نَشَاءُ. Same exact meaning, right? But the reason I cite this particular ayah from Surah Al-Anbiya today is because this is the ayah that Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas recited to his army at the Battle of Qadisiyyah. Right before they embark upon the battle and the skirmishes start, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas gave his pep talk, so to speak, his khutbah to the soldiers. And he told them this particular ayah. وَلَقَدْ كَتَبْنَا فِي الزَّبُورِ مِنْ بَعْدِ الذِّكْرِ أَنَّ الْأَرْضَ يَرِثُهَا عِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحُونَ. It has been written down in the scriptures after man was reminded that this earth will be inherited by the righteous servants of the Lord. And then Sa'd basically said to his army at Qadisiyyah, if your desire is to seek the akhirah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant you both dunya and akhirah. And if it is your desire to seek dunya alone, you will lose both. Why do I bring Qadisiyyah today? Because we made a promise at the very beginning of the month of Ramadan that we will talk about Ramadan Shahrun Nasr. Ramadan, the month of victory. Victory of the soul against shaitan. Victory of the spirit against temptation. Victory of a community against challenges. And certainly the victories that the Ummah had witnessed across the centuries, events that changed the course of history, all happened in the month of Ramadan. Last week we've spoken about the Battle of Badr. Another battle that happened in Ramadan was the conquest of Mecca, when the Muslims were able to bring Mecca into the sway, into the fold of Islam. The Battle of Hittin, in which Salahuddin al-Ayyubi brought back the city of Jerusalem from the Crusaders. The Battle of Ain Jalut, Saifuddin Qutuz, and the Mamluks, they were able to fend off Mongolian invasion. The Ottomans were able to acquire Bosnia in the month of Ramadan. Muhammad ibn Qasim al-Thaqafi was able to bring Afghanistan and the subcontinent into the fold of the Umayyad territory also in the month of Ramadan. So many to count of these life-changing events that happen in the month of Ramadan. And I wanted to use the month of Ramadan this year to remind you of that legacy, of that history. Because sometimes we're a bit broken as an ummah with all the battering that is happening to us, with all the Islamophobia, with all the attacks, with all the challenges that we face. Sometimes we are a little bit broken up on the inside. And I wanted to remind you that Ramadan is the month of victory. Why? Because every time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted victory to His believers, there was a prerequisite. There was a condition. There is something that they did that made them deserving and worthy of the triumph that Allah granted them. Last Friday, we've spoke about the Battle of Badr. And the lesson that I gathered was this, that the prerequisite of victory is your willingness to let the plan of Allah override your own. You have your own plan, but you always have to surrender to the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when it unfolds. If Allah wants to override and abrogate your plan, you should let that happen. That is a prerequisite of victory. The Battle of Qadisiyyah, brothers and sisters, is one of those battles that happened in the month of Ramadan, according to many scholars. Ramadan of the 15th year after Hijrah. Some scholars say that it happened in Sha'ban, over 4 or 5 days, but the consequences spilled over into Ramadan. The massive territorial acquisition that happened in Ramadan right after the battle was won in Sha'ban by the Muslims. Either way, whether it happened in Sha'ban or Ramadan, the fruit was harvested in Ramadan. The fruit was harvested in Ramadan. The city of Madain, the capital of the Persians, fell to the Muslims. Half of Persia fell to the Muslims. The Sassanid Empire, the great Persian Empire and the dynasty that lasted 2,000 years, effectively fell to 30,000 Muslim soldiers on that day. The cradle of civilization, Mesopotamia, became Muslim during the Battle of Qadisiyyah. Islam spread into Iran and Iraq and Asia Minor and even spilled over north into Anatolia and the Caucasus region, all because of the Battle of Qadisiyyah. One of the most decisive battles in the history of Islam. Perhaps the most decisive after the Battle of Badr, according to most Muslim historians. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. But before I get into the battle, I need to dedicate just a few moments to talk about conquest in general, al-futuhat. Because a lot of Muslims get squeamish when we start talking about conquest. And they start saying stuff like, oh, wait a second. We thought that war in Islam is only defensive. We thought that jihad is just jihadun nafs. And we thought that, we're not supposed to attack other people. Why would Muslim armies travel all the way to Persia? What is the point of that? Isn't Islam the religion of peace? And all such arguments. That again, Muslims that are psychologically defeated, who sometimes, feel a little bit disgraced about their own history, they perpetuate these ideas and these arguments that make absolutely no sense. Let me lay it out to you very clear and flat. All right? Number one, political borders and international boundaries between nations and countries in the ancient world were not drawn out by treaties and meetings and United Nations. There is no way to efficiently draw borders between countries because communication took months. If I am sitting in my capital and the other king sitting in his capital and we exchange messengers and we say, no, we have to use civilized methods to draw our border out, I will never be able to feel confident that he will follow his word. Why? Because it'll take me weeks, if not months, to realize that he had already invaded my country. And it's precisely because of that assumption, if you're familiar with the prisoner's dilemma, right? There's no way I can trust them and there's no way they can trust me. Because there's no effective communication. Which makes war and sheer power the only available method to people that lived in ancient times to draw borders, right? It was war and sheer power, and we should not be feeling awkward about this because this continues to happen until today. Just a few weeks ago, the United States government recognized the Golan Heights as part of the state of Israel, didn't they? Land that was stolen from the Syrians. Every single person on this earth knows that. It was just acquired by sheer military power, right? A few decades later, it was recognized. Now, Golan Heights is just part of the Israeli, continental Israeli border. That's it. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. Sheer power. 2014, the Russian Federation acquired Crimea. You guys remember that story? When they acquired Crimea from Ukraine, now you look at the maps, Crimea is not part of the Ukraine anymore. It's part of Russia. Is it legitimate? It doesn't matter. They did it because they could. Why is that okay for America and for Israel and for all other countries, for, France with half of Africa, right? Until today, there are parts of Morocco that are still administered by Spain, by the way. Until today. Land that is 95% Muslims that is still administered by Spain. Why is that okay in the modern world, but it was not okay for Muslims who did the best they could under the limited circumstances of their time? You should never feel apologetic about these things. This is how countries and nations drew out borders. And that's just how it was. But the most important point is this. Conquest was the default state of affairs in ancient times. Conquest is what was the default state of affairs. Nations and kings and emperors, they did it for resources, they did it for wealth, they did it for honor, they did it for legacy, they did it for more tax-paying subjects. It didn't matter, but they did it. And as the conventional wisdom suggests, if I don't do unto you, you will do unto me. If I don't come to your borders and threaten you, you will come to my borders and threaten me. Muslims did not have a choice in terms of conquests back in the day. The Roman Empire and the Persian Empire were at each other's necks anyway. And every day they were acquiring each other's territories. And it was just a matter of time before they turned their attention to the Muslims. And it was just a matter of time before the armies of Persia and the armies of the Roman Empire are at the gates of Medina and Mecca. Do you think that the Muslims should have allowed that to happen? If I don't do it to them, they'll do it to me. That was the state of affairs of the ancient world. And again, as Muslims, we should not feel shy and disgraced about that and try to hide it and try to find some kind of a postmodern interpretation and explanation to it. It doesn't work, right? But I think that there is also a third point to be made here. Muslims of ancient times had a responsibility, and their responsibility was to make sure that populations are exposed to the message of Islam. If a country is ruled by a tyrant who prevents the free flow of information, is not allowing Muslim merchants, is not allowing Muslim missionaries, not allowing, the Sahaba to travel and to preach Islam, Muslims in ancient times felt that they had a responsibility to open up the borders and remove the government so that those populations are exposed to Islam. Is that bad? It wasn't bad at the time. Now it sounds a little bit weird today because of our modern standards, but alhamdulillah, we don't have to resort to violent methods anymore. Social media does the job. TV does the job. Books do the job. The internet does the job. Islam, alhamdulillah, spreads and it reaches every home and it reaches every individual. We don't need to open up borders in order to achieve that. But ancient Muslims did not have a choice. They did not have a choice. They had to make sure, and people would say, well, oh, okay, that explains everything. Well, that's why we say Islam spread by the sword. Who said anything about converting people? All we're saying that Muslims wanted populations to be exposed, that's it. So that they're able to make their own choice. Convert or stay where we are. Freedom of religion was granted. It was as fundamental as any other tenet of the Islamic faith. In fact, for hundreds and hundreds of years, Muslims ruled over populations that were 80, if not 90% non-Muslim. And that was that. That was that. The idea of converting people to Islam was never on the table. But it was necessary for Muslims to realize that those populations, at least they know about Islam and they can make up their minds and make up their choices on their own with no intervention from the Muslims whatsoever. I needed to establish that. Because when we talk about conquest, when we talk about the futuhat, some Muslims, started getting a little iffy about it. And I needed to give you some ideas and information so that you can fend off these Islamophobic attacks and kill them in the cradle. Right? Don't engage in these things and be on the defensive. Right? Now back to Qadisiyyah. Qadisiyyah was this decisive battle that brought Islam into Iraq, Iran, possibly even Afghanistan, Asia Minor, the Caucasus, Anatolia, all of these territories, massive swaths of land were exposed to Islam precisely because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted victory to the Muslims on that day. 30,000 Muslims in the army of Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas were able to defeat an army of 120,000 Persians. And that does not even include the reinforcements that were standing behind. How did it happen? How did that happen? How this military marvel unfold is what I wanted to talk to you about today. But we're not telling tales, right? We're not just here to tell tales. We're here to examine the prerequisites of victory, right? We're here to examine the prerequisites of victory, not just to understand what they did, but to understand what we should do. If last week I said in the Battle of Badr, the prerequisite of victory is to surrender to the will of Allah and the plan of Allah if it overrides yours, right? That is a prerequisite of victory. And today I say this, one of the greatest prerequisites of victory that we've seen in that battle time and time again is, in one word, just so that you memorize it easy, the word creativity. The word creativity. The Muslims demonstrated the most tremendous amount of resourcefulness, problem-solving mentality like we've never seen before and we've never seen after in that particular battle. Being resourceful, being creative, thinking of solutions, and not becoming a complainer, but finding solutions to problems is a requisite of success in life in general, right? Let alone military success. What happened in this battle? Let me give you a small example from a beautiful story that happened in the battle. Rustum, the general of the Persian army, requested that the Muslims send him an ambassador or a messenger in order to negotiate and share terms, basically. So on his side, on his part, Rustum basically asked his servants to ornament the tent, to lay Persian rugs and carpets everywhere, beautiful light fixtures, the most expensive ornamentation in order to impress the Muslims and to show them the sheer power and wealth of the Persians, right? You would have thought that Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas needed to do the same thing. Select the most eloquent, the most good-looking, the wealthiest, ambassador possible with the greatest ability to negotiate, right? and send them with an entourage of 50 horses with servants and money and wealth and everything in order to match the pomp and pretense of the Persians. But Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas chose a very, very different tactic. He selected a Bedouin, very short, not even good looking, rough on the edges, doesn't speak very well, is not eloquent, who is riding a mule, who is wearing rags, doesn't even smell good. He selected the most unassuming person in his entire army. The one that, according to conventional wisdom, you would never, ever, ever choose as an ambassador, let alone someone that negotiates terms in the middle of battle. What was the main name of this particular man? His name is Rib'i ibn Amir. The only one incident in history in which his name was mentioned was that incident. That's it. We don't know anything else about him. And Rib'i ibn Amir is riding his mule, which, is not etiquette when you're going to meet the leader of the enemy, right? You should be riding a big horse or something, right? Wearing literally rags, torn rags on his body. He's very poor, Bedouin, rough on the edges, doesn't really sugarcoat his words, right? Real blunt guy. And he got off the mule, held the reins of the mule, and he's holding his spear, and he's walking towards the tent of Rustum, right? And literally, with every step he's taking, he's piercing the rugs with his spear, right? He's just walking, he's holding in his hands what he assumed to be a staff or something, right? But essentially, he was just like piercing the rug with every step, piercing the rugs. And the Persians are looking at him, they're shocked, it's blowing their minds. You couldn't believe it, they just destroyed all the rugs. And then he goes all the way up to the tent of Rustum, and he ties his mule to a post that is coming out of the tent, which is a huge sign of disrespect. And then he collects himself and his clothes, and he goes and he sits down next to Rustum on his own throne. And he's like, what? What? That was his attitude, literally. What did you bring me here for? So Rustum couldn't believe it. This is the man that Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas sends me to negotiate. And he felt so insulted by this. And he asked him, okay, fine. What are your terms? And he said, what terms? What are your terms? What are you here for? Why did you come to our country? He said, and I want you to memorize, those of you who understand Arabic must have heard it before, right? Because the books of history made this statement of Rib'i ibn Amir eternal, right? This is the only quote that we know about him. The only quote, that's it. The only time his name was mentioned was this time right there, right? He said to him, إن الله ابتعثنا لنخرج العباد من عبادة العباد إلى عبادة رب العباد ومن جور الأديان إلى عدل الإسلام ومن ضيق الدنيا إلى سعة الدنيا والآخرة. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent us to liberate people from slavery to man into the freedom of slavery to the Lord of man. And to liberate them from the tyranny of religion into the justice of Islam. And to liberate them from the narrowness of this dunya into the vastness of both dunya and akhirah. Words of wisdom came from the most unlikely human being. Rustum at this point is losing his mind. He is realizing that those Muslims, they're not here for dunya, they're not here to negotiate, they're not here for money and wealth. I can't buy these people out. I can't give them some money and say, go back to your country. It's not going to work with these guys. Do you understand now the strategy of Sa'd? This is the message that he wanted to send him. He found him the most unlikely person in order to send him that message. Whatever it is that you're going to try is not going to work. So he asked him, okay, I understand, but what are your terms? He said, it's not that much really. It's either that you pay homage to us, al-jizyah, pay homage, and we're just going to walk away. And we're going to have good diplomatic relations with you guys. Or you fight. If you're up to it, we're here to fight. If you want to fight, we'll fight. Sword to sword, no worries. Or if you guys happen to decide to become Muslim on your own, we will also respect that. You will become our brothers. You will have your country. We have our country. We respect our borders, but we share faith and we share culture and we share our religion together. That's fine. Those are your three options. And quite honestly, in ancient times, there was not a fourth option. There wasn't a fourth. What is the fourth option? For us to just go back to Medina? What is it? That's not an option. If we go back to Medina, what are the Persians going to do? They follow us to Medina, right? It was just as simple as that, right? And Rabi ibn Amr took his sword, his spear, got up, walked back to his mule, and marched back to Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. Not a thought in the world, not a worry in the world on his mind. Doesn't even think about it. Delivered the message and walked back to Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. The severe impact that this had on Rustum, from all the diaries, Rustum eventually was killed at the end of the battle, but from the diaries and the things that he said to his servants, it is suggested that nothing broke his spirit more than the words of Rabi ibn Amr. It wasn't even the battle itself. It was the attitude of a man. If this is the simplest soldier in the army of Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, I can't even imagine who else is in that army, right? And that's what I want to talk to you about today, very quickly and briefly. Again, we're just scratching the surface here, but we're taking advantage of those events of triumph that happen in the history of Islam in the month of Ramadan to learn lessons that will help us become successful in our own lives, in here and now, right? And I said, being resourceful, being creative, problem solving, thinking away from the conventions. I see this time and time again. Brothers and sisters in the community who are stuck. Someone who doesn't have a job. You lost your job and you're stuck 6, 7, 9 months, 10 months, a year. And what that person is really doing, that they're doing the same exact thing over and over again and they're expecting a different result, right? So that person is in the IT field, for example, and got laid off. So naturally, they keep sending their resumes to what? To IT companies. Right? Because again, conventional wisdom suggests, hey, I went to school and I graduated and I got my master's degree and I have 5-year experience in the IT field. That's my field, that's my career. I need to be in that field, right? So they keep sending their resumes and they keep getting rejected. And they keep sending their resumes and they keep getting I understand do that for a year or 2 years. Now you're on government assistance and Social Security and all of your credit cards are maxed out and you've borrowed money from your mom and you sold the land back home. There's nothing left. What is the definition of insanity, brothers and sisters? Is we keep doing the same exact thing over and over again and expect what? Expect a different result. You've been doing the same exact thing. Why do it didn't work. It didn't work the first time. It didn't work the 10th time. Why do you think it's going to work miraculously? Just because you keep doing it, it's going to work? Right? This brother, in my personal opinion, needs to try something very, very different, completely outside the box. Right? Whatever money that you still have left, $25,000, go and find yourself a grocery store. Go and invest money in a franchise. Go and buy yourself a house and flip it. And take out a loan from other friends and other investors in the community and then pay them back. You gotta do something outside of the box. If you keep doing whatever it is that you have been doing, right, you are set on a course of defeat, 100%. 100%. Unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala interferes with His help. And I said before, many times, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only helps those who help themselves. You got to help yourself first. You have to knock on other doors. You have to try unconventional methods. Things that will push you completely out of your comfort zone. Things that you never imagined that you'd ever do. This and only this can put you on a track of success. Only this can put you on a track of success. Problem solving. As a Muslim, you belong to a community. There's a lot of weaknesses in our community, a lot of challenges, a lot of areas that need improvement. We see those areas every single day and we do nothing about it, right? Problem solving requires you to say, okay, what is my skill set? I went to school and I studied this and I have that experience and this is what I'm really good at. And that area in the community seems to be weak and I think that I have the right expertise to address that issue. Come up with a plan, recruit a couple of volunteers and come to us with a proposal and say, guys, I got this. Don't worry about it. You don't have to do anything. I will take care of this entire area for you. This is what I will dedicate 2-3 hours a week and I will volunteer with a group of my friends. We're going to take care of this area for you entirely. Problem solving. That's how communities grow exponentially. If everything is organized by the leadership, well, the leadership has a finite bandwidth. Leadership doesn't think about everything. A lot of stuff falls through the cracks. But as a Muslim, you have your own observation. Look around and see what needs to be fixed, what needs to be addressed. Come up with a plan. Fix it on your own, right? One of the things that I said to you before, we've been looking for properties, right, in order for us to have our own permanent facility, inshallah. It wasn't us that found these properties. It was other community members. They were on the lookout because they feel the pain. There is fire in their hearts. And they act upon it. And they come up with creative solutions in order to serve their own community, right? Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, going back to Qadisiyyah, he tried so many methods to keep his army inspired. I mean, you're talking about 30,000 versus 120,000. I mean, that's like 4 times the numbers. It's a lot. It's a lot. The odds are against you. One man against 4, well-trained, well-fed Persian soldiers in their own territory, a land that is alien to the Muslims. The odds are against you in every way, shape, or form. So Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas tries to keep his army inspired, right? So he does everything that other people do. He tries the pep talks and the khutbahs, right? And that goes, to a certain extent. And then he tries to, organize Salatul Tahajjud, and every night he leads the soldiers in prayer. And then he sends the Qurra of the Quran, the best reciters, the best voice, to the tents in order to recite to them Surah Al-Anfal. What is the primary topic or subject of Surah Al-Anfal? Warfare. And victory in warfare, right? To inspire the believers, and that, of course, goes to a certain extent. But he realized that he's not able to up the spirit of his soldiers to the extent that he really wants. So he discusses it with his friend Al-Qa'qa' ibn Amr, one of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum jami'an wa arda. Qa'qa' ibn Amr said, you know what, Sa'd, I got you. Oh, what are you going to do? Don't worry about it. You just tell me the plan. I have your back. You just go back and focus on what you're doing, and I got this one. And then he improvised this plan entirely on his own, right? He was a leader of a brigade of about 1,000 soldiers, Al-Qa'qa', by himself, right? So he sneaks out his soldiers a couple at a time in every direction. They literally just scatter out of the army, walk away from the ranks of the army, and they disappear. And he had a plan with them. I want you guys to walk 3 or 4 miles and meet me at that spot. So after half a day had passed, 1,000 soldiers trickled out and walked all the way to this spot behind a hill about 4 or 5 miles away. Qa'qa' goes to them, and they're just waiting for their leader. What do we do now? Why did you pull us out of the battle? So Al-Qa'qa' said, I want you guys to organize yourselves into groups of 100. So it'll be how many groups of 100? 10. 10 groups of 100. And then I want you to march back to the army from different directions, saying Allahu Akbar as loud as you can, so that the army gets the impression that they just received reinforcements. Come into the army from 10 different directions, 100 each, and the Muslim army will be under the illusion, right, that reinforcements had just arrived. And his tactic was of the utmost success. It was more effective than all of the pep talks and all of the other strategies that Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, the general of that army, implemented. And this is, again, a quick reminder to all of you brothers and sisters. In this beautiful month of Ramadan, we learn from those events. What are the prerequisites of success? Last week in the Battle of Badr, we said that you need to be ready to surrender your plan and to let Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala implement His plan. And you completely put your plan on hold or do away with it altogether. Today I say, in order for you to achieve any success in your life, you got to think outside the box. You have to have the problem-solving mentality. You got to strategize and think of unconventional ways to address the problem and the challenge that you have. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for us as individuals and for us as a community to continue to grow and benefit this month of Ramadan. Brothers and sisters, raise your hands and speak to Allah Azza wa Jal from the heart. Ud'u Allah wa antum muqinuna bil ijabah. Inna alhamdulillahi nahmaduhu wa nasta'inu bihi wa nastahdihi wa nastaghfiruhu wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa sayyiati a'malina. من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأصلي وأسلم على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين وقائد الغر الميامين محمد الصادق الوعد الأمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه والتابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وارض عنا معهم بفضلك وكرمك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم آمين. My dear brothers and sisters, Ramadan is the month of victory. There were life-changing events, so many to count, that all happened in the month of Ramadan. And in this month, every Friday, we will remind you of one of those major life-changing, life-transforming events. Last week, we talked about the Battle of Badr and the willingness to give up your own plan and let Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala implement His plan. But you have to have a plan in the first place, as I said before. Today I talked about the Battle of Qadisiyyah, happened in the 15th year after Hijrah, in which the Muslims, 30,000 strong, were able to effectively bring the Persian Empire to its knees. They defeated the Persians, the Sassanid Empire, and they destroyed the Sassanid dynasty, and that is basically how Islam spread into Anatolia, into Iraq, Iran, Asia Minor, and even Afghanistan and, eastwards from there. What was the key ingredient of success for the Muslims in that particular battle? I said it was this very simple word, creativity. Being a problem solver, not getting stuck on a challenge and trying the same method over and over again and it continues to fail. Right? This is the prerequisite of success, of victory that we learn from this battle. And I remind you again of the very first ayah that I recited today from Surah Al-Anbiya. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that it was laid down in the scriptures after man has been reminded that this earth belongs to Allah and it will be inherited by the righteous. وَلَقَدْ كَتَبْنَا فِي الزَّبُورِ مِنْ بَعْدِ الذِّكْرِ أَنَّ الْأَرْضَ يَرِثُهَا عِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحُونَ. There should not be a single ounce of doubt in your heart that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cause the believers to eventually inherit this earth, figuratively or spiritually or literally. That is up to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tyranny will not last forever. Dictatorships will not last forever. Evil will not last forever. Batil will not last forever. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides that we don't inherit the earth in a literal sense, well, guess what? You will inherit something that is infinitely disproportionate to this tiny little speck that we call the earth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant you something that is a million fold bigger and grander than this earth, and that is to inherit Jannah itself. And that suffices to us. That suffices. We will put effort in order to make this earth surrender to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to utilize its resources properly, to spread justice and compassion and love. We will do what we can as Muslims, using the wisest and most non-violent and most compassionate means. That's what we do. But if all of that doesn't work, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still reserves that spot for you in Jannah. And I wanted to share with you one last story from Qadisiyyah, because this is the battle that we talked about today, in which the Muslims, 30,000 of them, were able to defeat 120,000 of the Persians. Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas got really sick right before the battle started. He had this skin outbreak that prevented him from engaging in the battle in person. So he literally laid down on his belly on a pillow on the roof of a building in order to oversee the battle. And he was sending commands to this battle through one of his generals. His name is Khalid. Not Khalid bin Walid, right? This is somebody else. A very unknown gentleman. In the army itself, however, there was a man by the name of Abu Mahjan al-Thaqafi. Abu Mahjan al-Thaqafi was, as they say, رَجُلٌ بِأَلْفِ رَجُلٍ. He was a man equivalent to 1,000 by himself. One of the absolute most ferocious soldiers with an established track record over the years. But Abu Mahjan, when it came to politics, was a little bit of a problematic guy. He did not like the appointment of Khalid as the general of this army. Khalid ibn Arfata, his name was. He was not okay with that. And he expressed his discontent with the decision of Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas publicly. Of course, we're not sitting in Medina. We can debate these matters together and everyone says their opinion. This is the battlefield. If you oppose the decision of your general, you've effectively committed an act of mutiny. This is treason. You can't do that. So Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, would not take it. He immediately imprisoned him in a jail cell. And he chose to isolate one of his best men and put him in a jail cell, just so that everyone learns a lesson. Abu Mahjan al-Thaqafi was also an extremely well-versed poet. So he sat there in his jail cell and he could even smell the thick of the battle. And he's not able to engage in it. And he was so depressed. And he started reciting this poetry. So who heard him? Salma, the wife of Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. And she came to the door of his cell in order to listen to the poetry. And he detected her. So he said, Astahlifuki billahi ya amat Allah. I ask you in Allah's name. And he knows that she is the wife of the commander himself. I ask you in Allah's name. I give you my word. If you release me, I will hide my identity and I will go fight. If I die as a shaheed. There's nothing for you to worry about. But if I survive, you have my word. Every night I will come back to the jail cell and I will tie myself in the shackles. You will never get in trouble because of this. And she said, oh, you must be crazy. I can't do that. And she literally walked away. So he starts reciting. He realizes that she loves poetry. So he starts diversifying all his poetry recitation. So who comes back in order to listen to the poetry? Salma, the wife of Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, the commander himself. And she listens a little bit and then he says, I ask you in Allah's name. You have my word. I've never broken my word before. Let me go out. I will fight with the Muslims. I will hide my identity. No one will know who I am. But every night I will come back here and put myself in this jail cell myself. And while you're at it, if you can lend me Al-Balqa, the horse that belongs to Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas himself, I would be very grateful. Because it's just sitting in the stables. He's sick, he's not using it, and it's a great horse. Allow me to use it. And she said, you must be completely out of your mind. He kept arguing with her until he convinced her. He convinced the wife of the commander to release him so that he goes and he fights in the battle. And she told him, okay, give me your word that you come back every night. But the Balqa thing, the whole horse thing, I cannot grant you that. You're going to have to figure that out on your own. So he goes and he breaks the lock on the stables. He takes the Balqa in the morning and he covers his face and completely hides his identity. And he fights in battle like there's no tomorrow. To the extent that all the Muslims were amazed with this angelic person that they don't even know who he is, that keeps, cutting through the ranks of the enemy back and forth like no one is able to stop him. All the while, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas is on the roof and he keeps looking and he's like, what is going on exactly with this guy? I swear, if I didn't know that my horse Al-Balqa is in the stables, I would have thought that is my horse over there. And if I didn't know that Abu Mahjan is in the jail cell, I would have thought that knight over there on that horse is Abu Mahjan. But I must be wrong because I know that he's rotten in jail somewhere in the palace. And then at night, to honor his word, Abu Mahjan comes back and he goes into the jail cell, he locks the door and he puts the shackles around his hands and his legs just like she left him. Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas goes and he wants to know what happened. Was that you out there? And Abu Mahjan says, what are you talking about? That was you out there, wasn't it? I don't know what you're talking about, Commander. That was you because no one would fight the way you fight. I am pretty 100% sure that was you out there. Who let you out of the jail cell? So he said, okay, fine. Here's what I did and your wife let me out. Of course, Sa'd couldn't say anything. And he eventually decided to forgive him. And the following day, he allowed Abu Mahjan to lead a brigade on his own. I can stand here and cite to you 10 other stories from Qadisiyyah, all involve a tremendous amount of creativity and problem solving and using unconventional methods to address problems. That was the prerequisite of success for the Muslims in that battle that completely changed the world. And it will continue until the Day of Judgment to be a prerequisite of success in any venture in your life. You want to become successful, you got to get creative. You got to knock on different doors. You're going to talk to different people. Accept different methods. Stay within what is halal, but open your mind because success is going to come from the most unexpected and the most unpredicted path. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our good deeds, to forgive us our sins, to establish us firmly on His path. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we will use our creativity within the boundaries of our sharia in order to serve Allah, to serve our deen, and to serve our community. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this community to continue to blossom and thrive and grow. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our fasting, to answer our du'as, to accept our prayers in this beautiful month of Ramadan, and to make us among those who are liberated from the fire. And Ya Allah, as you've gathered us here in this shape and form, we ask you to gather all of us in the highest level of Jannah. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma laka alhamdu kama yanbaghi li jalali wajhika wa azimi sultanik. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. اللهم عافنا واعف عنا وآثرنا ولا تؤثر علينا ودافع عنا ولا تدفعنا وارفعنا برحمتك ولا تضعنا وكن معنا ولا تكن علينا يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم تقبل صيامنا وقيامنا وأجب دعانا واجعلنا في هذا الشهر من عتقائك من النار واجعلنا فيه من المقبولين. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات المسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات يا رب العالمين. وأقم الصلاة إن الصلاة كانت على المؤمنين كتابا موقوتا.